Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to Hurricane Hub Live. I'm meteorologist Hunter Forrest. This is the show where we track everything that's going on in the tropics every single day at 8 o'clock. And of course, we have something significant out there right now in the Caribbean Sea. That is Tropical Storm Melissa that we have been tracking over the last couple of days. Already brought some flooding to areas around Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and still seeing some showers in the Dominican right now, just off towards the eastern portion of the island. But the bulk of the convection still out in the central Caribbean Sea. It has barely moved over the last couple of days. The speed has been around 1, 2, 3 miles an hour, and still this evening only moving to the north at about 2 miles an hour. Here's Jamaica over towards the west of the storm right now. The bulk of the convection off towards the east. But over the coming days, that will start to change as the storm gets closer and closer to Jamaica. But again, right now, the bulk of the convection out in the middle of the ocean. As of the 8 o'clock advisory, winds at 65 miles an hour, gusting to about 75. But over the next couple of days, it is going to intensify, and it's going to intensify rapidly into a Category 2, possibly by Saturday afternoon, and then up to a major Category 4 hurricane heading into Sunday afternoon, but it continues to strengthen heading into the upcoming work week. By Monday, we could be approaching Category 5 status. By Monday afternoon, winds of 155 miles an hour. That is just below Category 5 strength. So that chance is there. We could see a Category 5 approaching Jamaica heading into Tuesday morning and Tuesday afternoon. That's when we can start to see landfall if the eye does go over the island, and then eventually picks up some forward speed, luckily, as we head into Tuesday night into Wednesday. Could make another landfall in Cuba, and then the Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos are going to have to continue watching this system as it makes its way towards their direction heading into Wednesday afternoon. So again, here's a look at that cone. Going to continue to move very slowly the next couple of days. It's going to continue to do that. By Saturday, it's only moved, a couple miles. And then even by the time we get into Monday, so you have Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, it only has moved so many miles, but then finally starts to pick up some forward speed heading into Tuesday and Wednesday as it approaches Cuba. Right now, we're seeing some tropical storm warnings up for Jamaica, Montego Bay, Kingston, and also southern portions of Haiti. There's tropical storm warnings in effect, but also both areas having hurricane watches as well. Now, as we take a look at the sea surface temperatures here in the Caribbean, there is just astronomically warm waters. I mean, we're in the mid to upper 80s, 85 degrees, 83 degrees, even warmer closer to Kingston and Haiti. So that's helping Melissa get stronger and grow. But the reason why it hasn't really rapidly intensified yet is because of the wind shear. It's sitting over some shear right now, and we were seeing that in the tropical satellite. The bulk of the convection is actually to the east of the center of the storm. So the upper level winds are pushing the thunderstorms to the east of that center of circulation, making it a little bit more asymmetrical. But over the next couple of days, what you're going to notice is that the wind shear kind of pushes further off towards the north and backs off a bit. So not only is Melissa now going to have the extreme warm waters of the Caribbean, which are the warmest in the entire Atlantic at the moment, but also the wind shear is going to back off. So it is going to have everything going for it to really help it intensify, and that's exactly what we see in the forecast. Heading into Saturday, Sunday, and especially the upcoming work week, Monday into Tuesday, where we are approaching Category 5 strength just to the south of Jamaica. So the wind shear is off to the north, a lot of dry air in this region as well, but this wind shear is helping to block it from going towards the west over towards the Gulf. It's going to help move it to the right, off towards the north and the east, eventually as a trough pushes through a front and pushes it out to sea. But as we head into Monday and Tuesday, you'll notice that wind shear off to the north, warm waters, low wind shear, That's why we're going to see it develop very, very quickly. Here's a look at the spaghetti models over the next couple of days. It'll continue to move northward for a little bit longer, and then it's going to take that turn to the west over the next few days, very slowly moving. And then it's going to take a sharp turn to the north and the east, possibly making landfall in Jamaica, eventually seeing those spaghetti models over Cuba, and then somewhere from the Bahamas over to the Turks and Caicos, and then eventually out to sea. But I wanted to zoom in here on the spaghetti model. So each line is where the actual center could go. So it's not, the entire storm, it's the center, it's the eye, what could be the eye of the storm. So here are the spaghetti models here, a swath of these. So a lot of them, here is Jamaica from the M in Montego to right around here, just past the N in Kingston. So what you'll notice is the bulk of these spaghetti models take the eye or the center over Jamaica, and just a few take them just to the west of the island. Either way, whether the eye is here or it's here or here, still going to see some pretty devastating effects. If you get the eye, going over the Montego Bay here, you get a lot more storm surge for, Kingston. A lot of the island gets more of those strongest winds from the storm, because the east side, the front right quadrant, getting, the worst effects as those hurricanes make landfall. It's the northeast corner of the eye that really have the most impact from a storm. But again, a lot of the spaghetti models taking the center over the island of Jamaica. Here's a look at the European model over the next couple of days through the weekend, still not moving quickly. We're seeing some rain getting into Jamaica, but the eye down to the south. And then even as we head into Monday, Tuesday, still not made landfall yet. But we're starting to see definitely some tropical storm force winds, probably hurricane force winds as well, heading into the day on Tuesday. The storm, this is just what could possibly happen. Now, this is going to shift and change over the next couple of days, but this is just one scenario from the European model. And it's basically having the eye just go to the west of Kingston, Jamaica. So what does that mean for Kingston and the eastern area of the island? Well, the strongest winds are on this side of the hurricane. So Kingston and all of these areas are going to be seeing the strongest winds of the hurricane. Less wind over here, still strong winds, but not as strong, and also less rainfall as well for the west side of the island. But also you're going to be seeing storm surge on this side of the island as well. You also have really tall mountains. I believe the tallest peak in Jamaica is on the east side of the island, about 7,000 feet high. So all of that water is going to be rushing down the mountain, down into the valleys, into the rivers, and that's what's going to increase that flood threat, mudslide, landslide threat. You also get the orographic lift from those mountains, which helps squeeze out even more water. So again, here's the eye, here's the island of Jamaica, of course, and then you get storm surge going up into the island from the strong winds, bringing all of that water onto shore. So you have the flood threat from not only rain, but also storm surge. So this is just, of course, would be a devastating situation. You also have winds 140, 150 miles per hour, gusting even higher. If this was the case, even if, the eye was further out towards the west in this area, you're still getting storm surge and heavy rain for a bulk of the island. And then by the time we get into Wednesday, you'll notice it moves quickly, finally, from Jamaica to Cuba. So it picks up forward speed, still getting storm surge in Cuba. And then by the time we get into Wednesday evening and Thursday morning, pushes more over towards the Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos, and then eventually out to sea, heading into late Thursday and into Friday. But again, that was the European model. That's just one scenario. And then we have the American GFS model, which has kind of been iffy the last couple of days with this storm. It hasn't been doing a great job, but recently it's been trying to get its act together. But here's the latest look at what this thinking is. It does take it closer to Jamaica sooner. So the European model has Melissa just meandering to the south of the island for a couple of days. But by Monday, we're seeing Melissa getting close to the island, actually off the coast, just to the east, not actually making landfall, but still bringing heavy rain to the island and kind of going could possibly go between Haiti and Cuba. There's a chance that could happen, but kind of making landfall to the very far east corner of Cuba. And then this would be a bigger issue for the Turks and Caicos. So you have Cockburn Town in the Turks and Caicos. This situation could bring a lot of storm surge, heavy rain, strong winds. If it goes between Cuba and Haiti and doesn't make landfall in Jamaica, there's not a lot of land to weaken this system. Because once it goes through Jamaica, that'll help weaken it a little bit, but especially Cuba as well. Very mountainous region, a little bit more land interaction. That helps weaken it to a Cat 2, according to the National Hurricane Center by Wednesday. But if it stays along this path, it still has plenty of warm water. It doesn't interact with a lot of land. You're still getting a lot of storm surge, though, for Haiti, if that was the situation. But then it could maybe maintain its strength and then really affect the Turks and Caicos. That's just one situation that, of course, we'll have to watch over the coming days. And then eventually by Wednesday, that system pushes out to sea and it's out of here. But here's a look at the model comparison over the next couple of days. So the American model is in yellow and the European model is in red. So here we are on Saturday, an okay agreement. The GFS off towards the north, the European meandering to the south of Jamaica over the next couple of days. So here we are on Monday. It's parallel to the island, according to the American model. Now, this would bring some storm surge to Jamaica to the northern areas of the island, not so much the southern area, if this was to play out with the American model, because the winds now are pushing in this direction. So they actually be pushing, waters away from Kingston rather than towards it. And then we see the GFS, see kind of going between Cuba and Haiti, heading towards the Turks and Caicos. But then on Tuesday, we have the European model making landfall in Jamaica. So the Americans a little bit quicker with it getting out of here. The European a bit slower. Tuesday afternoon, a possible landfall. And then this is where we have very strong winds, storm surge, heavy rain, pretty much for the entire island. And then making another landfall in Cuba. GFS, it's out of here by Wednesday. By Wednesday, the European saying it's in Cuba. And then going between Turks and the Bahamas by Thursday. And then it's out of here. So at least by the end of the week, we pretty much know that the storm will finally be out of here. But where it goes still is up for debate. Right now, it's really likely we will see landfall in Jamaica. A lot of the spaghetti models, like I was showing earlier, putting the center of circulation over the island and then trekking towards Cuba. Here's a look at the forecast rainfall. A lot of rain. This is a big problem for this area. Like I was saying, a lot of mountains in these areas, especially around Cuba, Haiti. 7,000-foot mountain is the highest peak in Jamaica. Could see up to 2 feet of rain. That is just astronomical. Up to about 16 inches in Cuba, 21 inches in the southern areas of Haiti. So devastating flooding effects. The landslides are possible. From that orographic lift, helping squeeze out a lot of the water. A lot of that water runs down the mountain, causes the landslides, gets into the valleys. Those valleys start to flood. So overall, just a really, really tough situation. Here's a look at Jamaica's hurricane history, they've seen 18 major hurricanes within 50 miles of Kingston, Jamaica. But what I've been seeing over the last couple of days is that this could be similar to Hurricane Gilbert back in 1988, which was a Cat 3, close to Cat 4 hurricane as it was making landfall. Now, Melissa started out here as an invest and trekked its way towards the east, or towards the west, excuse me, just like Gilbert did. But Gilbert took a direct path over Jamaica and went relatively quickly. These are 12-hour intervals. But Melissa is going to be much slower. That's one of the bigger issues. But it started as a depression tropical storm along the Leeward Islands, eventually started to strengthen to the south of San Juan and Hispaniola, became a Category 3. I did read that the National Hurricane Center said that it made landfall as a Category 4 hurricane. So it could have just strengthened right before it made landfall. Kingston's right here, so it made landfall right around Kingston. Probably a ton of storm surge on the northern areas of the island. So this is a 12-hour interval. But for Melissa, this is going to be like a 3-day interval. That's how slowly the storm is going, and that's why they're going to see so much rain. But Gilbert made landfall as a category right on the fringe of Category 3, Category 4 hurricane, eventually moved off the west coast of the island, became even stronger, became a Category 5 hurricane, made landfall on the Yucatan Peninsula, weakened, and then moved back out over into the Bay of Campeche, and then eventually made landfall once again in northern Mexico as a stronger hurricane, and then eventually moved up into Texas as a tropical depression. But Hurricane Gilbert, made landfall as a Category 4, according to the National Hurricane Center, with winds of 130 miles an hour. That was back on September 12th, 1988. Over 45 people died and 100,000 homes were destroyed. So it was certainly a devastating hurricane for the island. And unfortunately, they will be seeing similar effects if, that European model was to play out. They would be seeing similar or even worse effects, especially from the slow movement of Melissa. Here's the takeaway: major flooding, landslide, wind and storm surge threats for Jamaica, but also for Cuba and Haiti as well. But Cuba, Haiti, Bahamas, Turks and Caicos have a little bit more time to watch and prepare. Well, Haiti, not so much. They're going to be pounded with rain as well. But, Cuba, Bahamas, Turks have a few more days to kind of figure out where this is going to go and what they could do to help, take action. So they need to take action, prepare for, days of hurricane impacts, especially Jamaica, days and days. Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then finally by Wednesday, the system pulling away from the island. So, of course, we're going to continue to keep you guys updated on the situation, about what's going on with Jamaica, with Hispaniola and Cuba as well. And, of course, the updates from the National Hurricane Center on any intensification with Melissa as we go through the weekend and into next week as well. But coming up on HHL, we're going to have a little bit more on Tropical Storm Melissa, but also Hurricane Hub Live trivia. That's coming up in just a couple of minutes. Well, Tropical Storm Melissa is brewing in the central Caribbean, with forecasters warning it could soon strengthen into a powerful hurricane. Catastrophic flooding and landslides are likely in southern Haiti in the coming days. Let's hear from some officials on the storm's possible impacts.
The main thing right now is that the ocean temperatures where hurricanes derive their energy from in the Caribbean are very, very warm. They're, roasty toasty, I guess, as you would say. And the storm is going to be able to tap into that energy and really intensify. The other challenge we have with Melissa is currently where Melissa is located. It is very difficult for Melissa to kind of move back out to sea without impacting some landmass. So if you kind of imagine a map of the Caribbean, you have all these little islands kind of around, and it's kind of stuck. It's sort of landlocked. No matter where it goes, eventually it's going to strike land. And that's the biggest concern with a strong hurricane like Melissa and where it is right now. We've been very lucky here in the United States that some of the really intense storms like Erin and Gabrielle, when they've been really intense, they've stayed out to sea. So they've been a little problematic for kind of shipping interests, but thankfully in terms of striking land or impacting people, the strongest storms have kind of stayed away from the United States. We have had historical storms in November and December, and generally those storms that form tend to like warm sea surface temperatures, Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico being hotspots for late season storms. So statistically, kind of the odds are that we hopefully won't see any major storms, but we shouldn't let our guard down, that there are examples in the historical record of storms forming in November and December and making landfall in the United States.
Just these rainfall amounts alone are likely to produce significant life-threatening flash flooding and landslides, especially in these mountainous areas along the southern coast of Dominican Republic and Haiti and in portions of Jamaica as well. So rainfall has historically been the biggest cause of loss of life in tropical storms and hurricanes in the Caribbean region.
Possibility of injuries from wind damage, debris and falling trees. The risk of waterborne or vector-borne diseases from flooding and stagnant water. So there's likely to be an impact on the entire society.
Well, now that we've come to the end of Hurricane Hub Live, it's time for a little bit of some trivia. So let's take a look at the question for this evening. Which hurricane was the first to be recorded on satellite? Was it Hurricane Esther, Hurricane Bob, Hurricane Andrea, or Hurricane Grace? Well, I'll have the answer for you tomorrow night because I'll also be doing Hurricane Hub Live tomorrow at 8 o'clock. But make sure to join us here every single day live for Hurricane Hub every day at 8 o'clock. Enjoy the rest of your evening and enjoy your weekend.